The Valkyran Armada appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday evening, the world had changed forever. Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet rotate below with satisfaction in his multiple eyes. This would be another easy conquest, another primitive world added to the Empire's vast collection of controlled systems. The humans had spotted his fleet within minutes of arrival, which was expected, but their response was almost amusing to watch. They scrambled their primitive aircraft, launched their chemical rockets, and sent frantic communications in hundreds of languages. "Begin the demonstration," Zekthar ordered. His voice calm and assured. A single pulse from the flagship's main weapon struck the Pacific Ocean, creating a wave that could be seen from space. The message was clear enough for even these primitives to understand. On the ground in Colorado, General Marcus Webb stood in the command center, watching the screens with growing horror. The alien ships numbered in the thousands, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Sir, our fighters are approaching the first wave," Lieutenant Amy Chun reported from her station, her voice tight with tension. "Tell them to be careful," Webb said, knowing his words meant nothing against what was coming. The human fighters engaged the Valkyran scouts near the moon, their missiles and guns blazing in the darkness of space. For 30 seconds, it looked like they might have a chance, like their weapons might actually hurt the enemy. Then the Valkyran shields activated, glowing with an eerie purple light that absorbed every projectile, every energy beam, every desperate attack the humans could muster. The counterattack came swiftly and without mercy. Valkyran plasma weapons cut through human ships like paper, turning metal and flesh into expanding clouds of debris. "We lost contact with the entire squadron," Chun said quietly, her hand shaking over a keyboard. Webb closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. There would be time to mourn later. If there was a later, order all forces to defensive positions, he commanded, "and get me the president across the planet." The Valkyran assault began in earnest. Their ships descended through the atmosphere with shields blazing, ignoring the desperate ground fire that splashed harmlessly against their barriers in New York. Dr. Helen Foster watched from her laboratory window as 3 massive Valkyran cruisers settled over Manhattan like metal mountains. She had spent her life studying physics, but nothing in her research had prepared her for technology this advanced. The cruisers began deploying ground forces, and Foster saw them for the first time. The Valkyran were tall, heavily armored, moving with purpose and coordination that spoke of centuries of military experience. "Dr. Foster, we need to evacuate now," her assistant shouted from the doorway. She grabbed her laptop and research files, knowing somehow that this knowledge might matter, might help, might be the difference between extinction and survival. The Valkyran ground troops moved through the city streets with efficient brutality. They didn't kill civilians unless fired upon, but they made their dominance clear with every step. Captain Jake Morrison pulled his fighter into a tight turn, trying to line up a shot on the Vulcan dropship that was landing near Chicago. His squadron had been reduced from 12 planes to 3 in the first hour of fighting. "Jake, my missiles aren't penetrating their shields," his wingman called over the radio. "Keep trying. Use everything you've got." Morrison shouted back. Even as he knew it was futile, he fired his entire payload at the dropship, watched the missiles explode harmlessly against the purple barrier, and then had to bank hard as return fire nearly clipped his wing. The Valkyran plasma bolt that missed him by meters was hot enough that he felt it through his canopy. He had faced enemy fire before in his career, but nothing like this. Nothing so powerful and precise. "All units, fall back to Rally Point Delta," came the order over his radio, and Morrison felt something break inside him. They were retreating, abandoning the cities, leaving millions of people to face the invaders alone in Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and a dozen other major cities. The same scene played out with minor variations. Human forces fought bravely, died quickly, and ultimately fell back before the Valkyrian advances. Ecthar monitored the conquest from orbit, pleased with how smoothly everything was proceeding. Resistance was minimal, casualties among his troops were negligible, and the humans were behaving exactly as predicted. They fight with passion but without strategy, his second-in-command observed. Their weapons are primitive, their tactics are outdated, and their coordination is poor, as expected, Zekthar agreed. Mark this world as pacified and begin resource extraction operations. By the end of the first day, the Valkyrian controlled every major city on Earth. Their orbital stations provided complete surveillance. Their ground forces had established the secret zones, and their assessment of humanity was complete. The humans were dangerous only in their desperation, primitive in their thinking, and ultimately no threat to the Empire's plans. General Webb sat in an underground bunker outside Denver, surrounded by what remained of his command staff. The reports coming in were all the same. Defeat after defeat, city after city falling to the invaders. How many did we lose? He asked Chun, not sure he wanted to hear the answer. 70% of our Air Force, 50% of ground forces in engaged areas. And we have no count yet on civilian casualties, she replied. Her voice barely above a whisper. Webb looked at the map on the screen, showing Valkyrian control zones spreading like a disease across the continents. Sir, what are our orders? Colonel Sarah Bennett asked from the doorway. She had escaped from New York with her special operations team, and her uniform was torn and stained with blood. We adapt, Webb said slowly, thinking through each word. We learn, we survive, and we find a way to fight back. Against that? Bennett gestured at the screen, showing Valkyrian walkers striding through the ruins of downtown L.A. How do we fight against that? I don't know yet, Webb admitted, but we're going to find out. Because the alternative is extinction. Dr. Foster arrived at the bunker 3 hours later, carried in by helicopter with her precious research files. She immediately went to work analyzing what little footage they had of Valkyrian technology. Morrison landed his damaged fighter at a hidden airfield in the Rockies, one of the few that the Valkyrian hadn't yet destroyed. He climbed out of the cockpit on shaking legs, knowing he had survived while better pilots had died around the world. In caves and tunnels, in forests and deserts, in the ruins of cities and the depths of underground facilities, humans gathered in small groups and asked themselves the same question. How do we fight back? On his flagship, Zekthar composed his report to the Empire with satisfaction. Earth was conquered, humanity was broken, and everything had gone exactly according to plan. He had no way of knowing that his report was premature, that the humans were not broken but merely learning, not defeated but preparing, and that the easy victory he celebrated would soon become his greatest failure. The invasion had gone perfectly, but the war was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the Valkyrian invaded Earth, and Commander Zekthar believed the war was over. His forces controlled every major city. His orbital stations monitored all human activity, and resistance appeared to be nothing more than scattered survivors hiding in remote areas. What Zekthar didn't understand was that humans learned quickly when survival was at stake in the underground bunker outside Denver. General Marcus Webb stood before a holographic map showing Vulcan patrol routes. After 3 weeks of careful observation, patterns were beginning to emerge. They sent patrols on the same routes at the same times. Lieutenant Amy Chen explained, pointing at the glowing lines on the map. They're efficient but predictable. That's a weakness we can exploit, Colonel Sarah Bennett said from her position near the door. She had spent the last week training small teams in guerrilla tactics. Dr. Helen Foster looked up from her workstation, where pieces of salvaged Valkyrian equipment lay scattered across multiple tables. She had been working without sleep for days, surviving on coffee and determination. I found something, she announced. And everyone in the room turned to look at her. She held up a small device taken from a destroyed Valkyran drone. Its purple surface still humming with residual energy. Their shields operate on a specific frequency range, Foster explained, her words coming fast with excitement. If we can generate an electromagnetic pulse tuned to that exact frequency, we might be able to disrupt them. Webb approached the table, studying the alien technology with interest. How long to build a working prototype? He asked. With the equipment we have here? Maybe 2 weeks, Foster replied. But we'll need more salvaged Valkyran tech to refine the design. Then we get you more tech, Bennett said simply. My team can hit a supply convoy tomorrow night. Captain Jake Morrison had been listening from the back of the room. And now he stepped forward. I can provide air support, he offered. We have 6 fighters operational at the hidden airfield. Webb looked at each of them in turn. Seeing determination in their eyes where 3 weeks ago there had been only shock and fear. Make it happen, he ordered. And Chun, what's the status of our communication network? Chun pulled up another display, showing a web of connections spreading across North America. We've established contact with resistance cells in 14 states, she reported, using old radio equipment and coded messages. Nothing digital that the Vulcan can intercept. How many fighters do we have total? Webb asked. Maybe 10,000 with military training, Chun replied. But civilians are joining every day. People who lost families, homes, everything to the invaders. Train them all, Webb said. Everyone who wants to fight gets trained. Because we're going to need every person we can get. The next night, Bennett led her team through the ruins of downtown Denver. The city was dark, except for the glow of Valkyran patrol craft moving between buildings. Private Daniel Cross followed close behind her, his captured Valkyran rifle held ready. He was young, barely 20, but the invasion had aged him in ways that time never could. Target is 2 blocks ahead, Bennett whispered into her radio. Morrison, are you in position? High above the city, Morrison flew his fighter through the darkness with all lights off. Flying blind was dangerous, but getting spotted by Valkyran scanners was worse. In position, he confirmed quietly. Waiting for your signal, Bennett's team moved through the shadows, approaching the Valkyran supply depot with careful precision. They had studied the patrol patterns for weeks, knew exactly when the guards would change positions. Cross saw the supply trucks first. Massive vehicles loaded with equipment and weapons. There, he whispered. Pointing, Bennett nodded and signaled the team to spread out. They had 60 seconds before the next patrol came around. The first explosive charge went on the main fuel tank, the second on the ammunition storage. Bennett set the timers with steady hands, knowing that any mistake would kill them all. Charges set. Moving to extraction point, she reported. The team was halfway back to safety when the alarm started blaring. Someone or something had spotted them, and suddenly the night was full of Valkyran soldiers. Morrison, we need that air support now, Bennett shouted into her radio as plasma bolts started flying. Morrison's fighter screamed down from the darkness, his guns blazing. The Valkyrans scattered, their attention divided between the ground team and the aerial threat. Cross fired his captured rifle at a Valkyran soldier, saw the shield flare and absorb most of the impact. The aliens staggered but didn't fall. Their shields are too strong. Cross yelled, concentrated fire, Bennett ordered, and 3 team members focused their weapons on a single target. The Valkyran shield flickered, weakened, and finally collapsed. The soldier fell, and the team had their first kill since the invasion began. The explosives detonated right on schedule, turning the supply depot into a fireball that lit up the night sky. Morrison pulled up hard, narrowly avoiding the blast wave. Get out of there, he called to Bennett's team. They ran through the ruins as more Valkyran troops converged on their position. Cross turned to fire covering shots. Using the tactics Bennett had drilled into them, one of the team members went down. hit by plasma fire, and cross-grabbed him without thinking. He couldn't leave anyone behind. Wouldn't let the Valkyran take prisoners. Morrison made another pass, his guns tearing into a Valkyran patrol craft. The alien vehicle's shields held, but it veered off course, giving the ground team precious seconds to escape. They made it to the extraction point, with Valkyran soldiers close behind. The hidden vehicles roared to life, and the team piled in as plasma bolts struck all around them. "Go, go, go!" Bennett shouted, and the drivers didn't need to be told twice. They disappeared into the tunnel system beneath the city, passages that the Valkyran didn't know existed. It was humanity's home ground advantage, and they were learning to use it back at the bunker. Foster examined the equipment salvaged from the depot with hungry eyes. "This is perfect," she said. "Connecting alien components to human computers. With this, I can have a prototype EMP weapon ready in a week." Webb watched her work, then turned to Bennett. "Good job out there," he said. "How many did we lose?" "One wounded, no deaths," Bennett replied. "And we killed 3 Valkyran soldiers. Their shields can be overwhelmed with concentrated fire. Then we teach that tactic to every resistance cell we have." Webb ordered over the next 2 weeks. Similar attacks happened across the planet. Resistance fighters hit supply convoys, sabotaged Valkyran equipment, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. The Valkyran retaliated with brutal force, destroying buildings where they suspected resistance hideouts. Innocent civilians died, but instead of breaking human spirit, it only made them angry. Zecthar stood on his bridge, reading reports of increasing resistance activity with growing frustration. "These humans should have surrendered by now," he said to his second-in-command. "Why do they persist in this futile resistance? Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand they're defeated," the officer suggested. "Perhaps," Zecthar agreed. But doubt crept into his mind for the first time in Seattle. A resistance cell captured an entire Valkyran outpost through careful planning and surprise tactics. They studied the alien weapons, learned how they worked, and passed that knowledge to other cells in Brazil. Fighters destroyed a Valkyran mining operation, costing the invaders valuable resources in Australia. A sniper team picked off Valkyran patrols using captured plasma rifles modified by human engineers to have better range. Dr. Foster finally completed her prototype EMP weapon, a bulky device that looked like it was held together with tape and prayer. "It's not pretty," she admitted to Webb, "but it should work." They tested it on a captured Valkyran shield generator, and everyone held their breath as Foster activated the device. The shield flickered, sparked, and died. "It works," Chun shouted, and cheers erupted throughout the bunker. Webb allowed himself a small smile. "The first in 3 weeks. How many can you build?" he asked Foster. "As many as you can get me the parts for," she replied. Morrison stood with his pilots, looking at a map marked with Valkyran positions. "We're not beaten," he said to them. "We're learning, and every day we get stronger." Private Cross cleaned his weapon in the barracks, thinking about the soldier he had carried to safety. They were still alive because they worked together, because they didn't give up around the world. The message spread through resistance networks. Humanity was fighting back, and the Valkyran were not invincible. Zethar didn't know it yet, but his perfect invasion was beginning to unravel. 2 months into the occupation, Commander Zecthar finally admitted to himself that something had gone wrong. The humans were supposed to be broken by now, scattered and defeated, accepting their place in the Empire. Instead, they were growing bolder, striking harder, and somehow learning to counter Valkyran technology at an impossible rate. Another supply convoy destroyed, his second-in-command reported. "That's the 5th one this week." Zecthar studied the tactical display with frustration building in his chest. Red markers showed resistance activity across every continent, and the pattern was becoming clear. They're coordinating, he realized. These attacks aren't random. They're part of a larger strategy. Should we request reinforcements from the Empire? The officer asked carefully. No, Zekthar said quickly, too quickly. Admitting he needed help with primitive humans would destroy his reputation. We can handle this ourselves. In the Denver bunker, General Marcus Webb stood before a much larger map than he'd had 2 months ago. Resistance cells across the planet were now connected through Chen's communication network, sharing intelligence and coordinating attacks. Dr. Foster, what's the status on the EMP weapons? Webb asked. Foster looked up from where she was training a group of engineers to build the devices. We've produced 47 units, she reported. And I've sent the specifications to resistance cells with the technical capability to manufacture their own. 47 isn't enough, Colonel Sarah Bennett said. We need hundreds if we're going to pull off the operation. The operation she referred to was ambitious beyond anything they'd attempted before. A coordinated strike on Velkaran orbital command stations, designed to disrupt their surveillance and communications. We'll have enough, Webb assured her. Foster's team is working around the clock, and other cells are contributing their units. Captain Jake Morrison entered the room with Lieutenant Amy Chun, both of them looking excited. You need to see this, Morrison said, pulling up a video on the main screen. The footage showed a Velkaran patrol craft flying over Los Angeles when suddenly its shields flickered and died. Human fighters swooped in immediately, their missiles finally able to hit unprotected armor. The Velkaran craft went down in flames. That was the Portland cell, Chun explained. They used Foster's EMP design, and it worked perfectly in combat conditions. Webb allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before returning to business. How many fighters do we have operational now? He asked Morrison. 73 across all hidden airfields, Morrison replied. Not much compared to what we lost. But we're modifying them with captured Vulcan weapons engineer. Luis Ramirez stepped forward, carrying something that looked like a bizarre hybrid of human and alien technology. Speaking of modifications, he said with a grin, I've been working on something special. He held up what appeared to be a plasma rifle built into a human weapon frame, with additional components cannibalized from 3 different sources. It fires Vulcan plasma at twice the normal rate, Ramirez explained. The targeting system is human-made for better accuracy, and I've added an overcharge function that the original designers never thought of. Does it work? Bennett asked skeptically. Only one way to find out, Ramirez replied. They tested it at the underground firing range, and everyone watched as the hybrid weapon punched through a captured Vulcan shield on the first shot. The overcharge burns out the shield generator before it can adapt. Ramirez explained proudly. I call it the equalizer. How many can you make? Webb asked, already knowing the answer mattered. With enough parts and help? Maybe 100 a week, Ramirez said. Then make as many as you can, Webb ordered. And teach other engineers how to build them. That night, Colonel Bennett led a mission into downtown Denver, deeper into Velkaran-controlled territory than they'd ever gone before. Her target was the Planetary Command Center, and she wasn't going into attack. She was going into Spy Private Daniel Cross, accompanied her along with 5 other Special Operations soldiers. They moved through the ruins like ghosts, avoiding Velkaran patrols through a combination of timing and sheer luck. The command center was a converted office building, now bristling with alien technology and heavily guarded. Bennett studied it through her scope, memorizing guard positions and patrol patterns. That's where they coordinate everything, she whispered to Cross. Communications, surveillance, troop movements, all running through their central AI network. Can we take it? Cross asked. Not yet, Bennett admitted. But soon, they were about to withdraw when Cross spotted something interesting. A Vulcan engineer was working on an external access port, running diagnostics on the AI system. Boss, if we could get into that port, Cross said quietly. Could Foster hack their network? Bennett looked at the port. Bennett cross, and smiled. "You just gave me an idea," she said. They captured the Vulcan engineer 3 hours later as he was returning to his quarters. It was quick and quiet, and nobody saw it happen. Foster interrogated the engineer with the help of a translation program she'd built from captured Vulcan computers. At first, he refused to cooperate, but when she showed him footage of human children killed by Vulcan bombardment, something changed in his expression. "Your empire told you we were primitives," Foster said calmly. "Animals without culture or value." The engineer looked at the images, and Foster saw doubt in his alien features. "We're not animals," she continued. "We're people fighting for our home, and we're going to win." The engineer studied her for a long moment, then began to talk. What he revealed changed everything. The Vulcan command network was indeed AI-controlled, but it had a central vulnerability that even the Empire didn't know about. If you overload their central processing hub with conflicting commands, the engineer explained through the translator, the AI will shut down to prevent damage, taking all connected systems offline for approximately 8 minutes. 8 minutes, Webb repeated when Foster briefed him. "That's not much time." "It's enough," Bennett said firmly. 8 minutes of blindness, 8 minutes without coordination. We can do massive damage in that time. Morrison nodded in agreement. "We hit them everywhere at once," he said. "Every resistance cell, every hidden fighter, every weapon we've built. It'll have to be perfectly timed," Chun warned. "If even one cell attacks too early, we lose the surprise." Webb looked at each of them, seeing the determination in their faces. "Then we make it perfect," he said. "Chun, send the word to all resistance cells. Prepare for simultaneous attack in 1 week. What are we calling this operation?" Morrison asked Liberation. Webb replied simply over the next week. Resistance cells across Earth prepared for the largest coordinated attack since the invasion. Foster produced EMP weapons by the dozens. Ramirez built equalizers faster than anyone thought possible. And Chung coordinated timing across 12 time zones. Vulcan noticed the decrease in attacks and assumed the humans were finally giving up. Zekthar allowed himself to relax slightly. Believing his show of force had worked, he had no idea that the humans were simply getting ready. Bennett's team infiltrated the command center again, this time carrying a device Foster had built specifically to overload the Vulcan AI. It looked like a portable hard drive, but contained enough corrupted data to choke a supercomputer. "Once I plug this in," Bennett told Cross, "we have to get out fast. They'll know something's wrong within seconds." "Understood," Cross replied, checking his equalizer rifle for the 10th time around the world. Resistance fighters checked their weapons, said prayers in a dozen languages, and prepared to fight for their planet. Morrison sat in his fighter at the hidden airfield, watching the clock tick down to attack time. "This is it," he said to his squadron over the radio. "Today we show them what humans can do." In the Denver bunker, Webb stood before the map one last time, seeing red markers for every resistance cell ready to strike. "For everyone we lost," he said quietly. "For everyone still suffering under occupation. For Earth." Chun added the countdown reached 0, and across the planet, humanity struck back with everything they had. Bennett plugged Foster's device into the command center AI, and within seconds, alarms began blaring throughout the building. "Go, go, go," she shouted, and her team ran for the exit as confused Vulcan soldiers tried to figure out what was happening. The AI system flickered, sparked, and died, taking communications, surveillance, and tactical coordination offline across the entire planet for 8 minutes. The Vulcan fought blind and alone, and in those 8 minutes, humanity reminded them why underestimating human beings was a fatal mistake. The moment the Vulcan command network went dark, resistance fighters across Earth launched their attacks with precision born from months of planning and preparation. Captain Jake Morrison, led his squadron through the night sky over Colorado. Their fighters modified with captured plasma cannons and equipped with Dr. Foster's EMP weapons. Below them, the Vulcaran Planetary Command Center in Denver burned as Colonel Bennett's ground forces stormed the building. All units. Shields are down on the northern defense platform, Morrison called over the radio. Concentrate fire on that target. His pilots responded instantly, pouring fire into the unprotected Vulcan installation. Without their AI coordination, the alien defenders were slow to react. Confused and disorganized, Morrison lined up his shot on a Vulcaran gunship that was trying to scramble from its landing pad. His plasma cannon charged with a familiar whine, and he felt grim satisfaction as the alien craft exploded before it could take off. "That's for everyone they killed," he said quietly on the ground. Bennett kicked down the door to the command center's main operations room, her equalizer rifle ready. 3 Vulcan officers reached for their weapons, but her team was faster. Private Daniel Cross fired his modified plasma rifle, the overcharge function burning through a Vulcan shield like it wasn't even there. The alien fell, and Cross felt nothing but cold determination. "Secure the room," Bennett ordered. Her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. Engineer Luis Ramirez ran to the central computer terminal, his fingers flying over both human and alien controls. He had 8 minutes to cause as much damage as possible before the AI system came back online. "I'm downloading their entire tactical database," he reported. "Troop positions, supply routes, command codes. Everything." "How long?" Bennett asked, firing at a Vulcaran soldier who appeared in the doorway. 4 minutes, Ramirez replied. "Assuming nobody unplugs me." Cross and 2 other soldiers formed a defensive line at the door, holding off Vulcan reinforcements who were finally starting to organize. Without the AI telling them what to do, the aliens fell back on basic training, but it made them predictable. "They're charging straight at us," Cross shouted. "No tactics, no coordination." "Then make them pay for it," Bennett responded. Across the city, General Marcus Webb commanded the overall operation from his mobile headquarters. Screens showed him resistance attacks happening simultaneously in Tokyo, London, Moscow, Lagos, and dozens of other cities. Report from Los Angeles. Lieutenant Amy Chung called out. "They've taken the spaceport and grounded the entire Vulcaran transport fleet." Sydney is reporting success at the resource extraction facility, another operator added. "They're destroying the mining equipment." Webb watched the tactical map light up with successful strikes and felt hope burning in his chest for the first time in months. "What's the status on the orbital defense platforms?" he asked. "Morrison's squadron has destroyed 2 of them," Chen replied. "But there are still 8 more protecting the command ships." "Then we keep hitting them," Webb said. "Foster, are the EMP weapons holding up?" Dr. Helen Foster monitored the technical data streaming in from resistance cells around the world. Her makeshift weapons were performing beyond expectations, disrupting Vulcaran shields faster than the aliens could adapt. "They're working perfectly," she confirmed. "The frequency modulation I added is preventing the shields from compensating." "Good," Webb said, then raised his voice to address the entire command center. "All units, push forward. We have 6 minutes before their AI comes back online. Make every second count." In orbit above Earth, Commander Zekthar watched his perfect conquest collapse in real time. Red warning lights flashed across his bridge as reports of attacks came in from every sector. "How did they do this?" he demanded. "How did primitives shut down our entire command network?" "Unknown, Commander," his second-in-command replied. "Frantically trying to restore communications. The AI is completely offline, and manual override isn't responding. A human fighter squadron appeared on their sensors. Closing fast on the flagship, impossible." Zekthar shouted. "Those fighters can't reach orbital altitude." "But they could, because human engineers had modified them with captured Vulcan propulsion systems. They weren't pretty, and they wouldn't last long in space. But they didn't need to. Morrison's voice came over his squadron's radio. Clear and determined. This is for New York. For Beijing, for every city you destroyed, he said. Fire everything. 20 human fighters unleashed their weapons at point-blank range. EMP pulses hit the flagship shields, disrupting them long enough for plasma cannons and missiles to strike unprotected hulls. Hector felt his ship shudder under the impact. Felt systems failing throughout the vessel. Return fire. He ordered, but his gunners were too slow. The human fighters had already scattered. Using tactics his weapons couldn't track. Another explosion rocked the flagship. And Hector realized with growing horror that he was losing back in Denver. Ramirez finished his download with 30 seconds to spare. Got it all. He announced triumphantly. Every secret they have is now ours. And let's go. Bennett ordered, already moving toward the exit. They fought their way out of the building as Vulcan reinforcements poured in. Cross covered the retreat with sustained plasma fire. His equalizer rifle never overheating thanks to Ramirez's. Modifications of Vulcan Heavy Walker appeared at the end of the street. Its massive frame bristling with weapons. Walker! Someone shouted, and the team scattered for cover. Cross saw the Walker's main cannon swivel toward Bennett, and didn't think. He grabbed a captured plasma cannon from a dead Vulcan soldier, aimed at the Walker's leg joint where the armor was weakest, and fired. The overcharged blast severed the joint completely, and the Walker toppled with a crash that shook the ground. Nice shot, Bennett called, but Cross was already moving, already looking for the next threat. The 8 minutes ended, and the Vulcan AI system flickered back online, but the damage was done. Resistance forces had struck hundreds of targets, destroyed critical infrastructure, and killed thousands of alien soldiers. More importantly, they had captured the Vulcan tactical database, which Foster immediately began analyzing for weaknesses. Their main fleet is running low on fuel, she reported to Webb. They need to make a supply run to their nearest depot, which is 3 weeks away at current speed. 3 weeks, Webb repeated thoughtfully. 3 weeks when they'll be vulnerable. Morrison's squadron limped back to the hidden airfield, half of them damaged but all of them alive. They had destroyed 4 orbital defense platforms and damaged Hector's flagship. We hurt them, Morrison told his pilots. Really hurt them. Around the world, resistance fighters celebrated their victories and mourned their losses. They had proven that the Vulcan were not invincible, that humanity could fight back and win, but the cost had been high. Thousands of fighters had died in the coordinated attacks, and entire resistance cells had been wiped out by Vulcan retaliation in the Denver bunker. Webb gathered his commanders for a debrief. We won today, he said, but the war isn't over. The Vulcans still control most of the planet, and they'll be looking for revenge. Let them look, Bennett said firmly. We've proven we can beat them. We've proven we can hurt them, Webb corrected. Now we need to prove we can drive them off our world completely. Foster brought up the tactical database on the main screen, highlighting key information. According to their own records, she explained, the Vulcan have never faced sustained resistance like this. Every other species they conquered either surrendered quickly or was wiped out. We're neither, Morrison said. We won't surrender, and we're too stubborn to die. Cross cleaned his rifle in the corner, listening to the commander's talk. He thought about the Walker he'd destroyed, about the teammates he'd saved, and felt something he hadn't felt since the invasion began. Felt like they could actually win this war. Hector stood on his damaged bridge, looking down at Earth with new understanding. The humans weren't primitives to be easily conquered. They were warriors who grew stronger under pressure. Send a message to the Empire, he ordered quietly. Request immediate reinforcements. His second-in-command hesitated. Commander, that will be seen as an admission of failure. I don't care, Zekthar replied. These humans are more dangerous than anything in our military database. If we don't get help, we're going to lose this planet. The message went out, traveling faster than light toward the distant empire. And Zekthar knew the response would take weeks to arrive, weeks during which the humans would keep fighting, keep learning, keep growing stronger. For the first time since the invasion began, Commander Zekthar wondered if perhaps everything hadn't gone according to plan after all. The final week of the war began with humanity pressing every advantage they had gained. Commander Zekthar's request for reinforcements was still weeks away from any response, and the Velkaran forces on Earth were running out of time, resources, and hope. General Marcus Webb stood in the command center, watching real-time feeds of resistance forces pushing into Velkaran-controlled territories across the globe. They're retreating to their ships, Lieutenant Amy Chen reported, highlighting movement on the tactical display. Every major ground installation is being abandoned. They're going to try to escape, Colonel Sarah Bennett observed. We can't let that happen. We won't, Webb assured her. Dr. Foster, what's the status on the orbital weapon platforms? Dr. Helen Foster pulled up schematics stolen from the Vulcan database. We've disabled 6 of the 8 remaining platforms, she said, but the 2 covering Zekthar's flagship are still operational. Without taking those out, our fighters can't get close enough to prevent the fleet from launching. Then we take them out, Captain Jake Morrison said firmly. My squadron is ready. You'll be flying into a kill box, Webb warned. Those platforms have enough firepower to wipe out your entire squadron in seconds, Morrison met his gaze steadily. Then we don't give them seconds, he replied, engineer. Luis Ramirez stepped forward with a device that looked even more improvised than his usual creations. I might have something that can help, he said. I've been working on a scaled-up version of Foster's EMP weapon, powerful enough to take out an entire orbital platform in one shot. Might? Bennett asked skeptically. Okay, it will definitely work, Ramirez amended. Probably. There's a 70% chance it won't explode and kill everyone within half a mile. I'll take those odds, Morrison said with a grim smile. Private Daniel Cross listened to the planning session, his modified equalizer rifle resting against his shoulder. He had survived 3 months of fighting, seen things no 20-year-old should see, and learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was refusal to give up. When do we move? He asked Bennett quietly. Tomorrow morning, she replied. One final push to drive them off our world. That night, resistance fighters around the globe prepared for what everyone hoped would be the last major battle. Weapons were cleaned, farewells were said, and prayers were whispered in every language humanity spoke. Webb composed a message to be broadcast to all resistance cells. His words simple and direct. Tomorrow we fight not for victory, but for freedom. His message read, the Velkaran came to our world expecting easy conquest. We showed them the price of underestimating humanity. Now we show them the cost of staying. For Earth, he finished. For everyone we lost, for everyone still fighting, and for every generation that comes after us. Chum broadcast the message using every available channel and across the planet. Fighters read the words and felt their resolve strengthened. Broke over Colorado as Morrison's squadron took off from the hidden airfield. Their fighters were battered, held together with salvaged parts and human ingenuity. But they flew true. Remember the plan, Morrison said over the radio. We have one shot at this, so make it count. He carried Ramirez's Super MM in his weapons bay, a device that might save them all or might explode and kill him instantly. Either way, he was going to try. The Velkaran orbital platforms detected the incoming fighters and opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts filled the space between Earth and orbit, creating a wall of death that seemed impossible to penetrate. Morrison's squadron scattered, weaving through the fire with skill born from 3 months of desperate fighting. "They're tracking us." One pilot called out as a plasma bolt nearly clipped his wing. "Stay evasive." Morrison ordered, "Don't make it easy for them." 2 fighters exploded, their pilots dying instantly, and Morrison felt the loss like a physical blow. But he couldn't stop, couldn't turn back. Because too many people were counting on him, he broke through the defensive fire and saw the orbital platform ahead. Massive and bristling with weapons, "This is for everyone they killed," he shouted, launching the Super EMP at point-blank range. The device struck the platform and detonated in a pulse of electromagnetic energy so powerful that Morrison's fighter went dead for 3 seconds. When his systems rebooted, he saw the platform dark and lifeless, drifting in orbit with all power offline. It worked. He called out in triumph, "The platform is down." On the ground, Bennett's forces launched their assault on the Vulcaran ground positions around the spaceport. With the orbital platforms disabled, they could move freely without fear of bombardment from above. Cross led his team through the ruins of Denver, engaging Vulcaran soldiers who were now fighting a desperate retreat toward their ships. "They're scared," Cross shouted to his team. "Keep pushing." The Vulcaran were indeed afraid, and fear made them dangerous. They fought with the desperation of beings who knew they were losing, and the casualties mounted on both sides. Bennett kicked down the door to the spaceport control tower, her equalizer rifle blazing. 3 Vulcaran officers fell before they could draw their weapons. "Secure the launch controls," she ordered. "Don't let any ships escape." Ramirez reached the main console and started working with frantic speed. He needed to lock down the launch systems before the Vulcaran could initiate their escape sequence. "They're trying to override the lockdown," he called out as his fingers flew across the alien controls. "How long can you hold them?" Bennett asked, firing at Vulcaran soldiers trying to retake the tower. "As long as you keep them off me." Ramirez replied in orbit. Zekthar watched his forces collapse with growing horror. The humans had disabled his orbital defenses, seized control of the launch facilities, and were systematically destroying every Vulcan position on the planet. "All ships, attempt emergency launch," he ordered desperately. Authorization code override, but Ramirez had locked down the systems too thoroughly. The Vulcaran ship's engines powered up, but couldn't initiate launch sequence. "Negative on launch," his officers reported. "Ground control has full lockdown." Zekthar realized in that moment that he had truly lost. Not just the battle, not just the planet, but his reputation, his command, and possibly his life. "Open a channel to the human leadership," he said quietly. "I wish to negotiate terms in the Denver Command Center." Webb received the transmission with surprise. "The Vulcaran commander wants to talk," Chum reported. "Patch him through." Webb ordered. Zekthor's image appeared on the screen, and Webb saw defeat in the alien's eyes. "I am Commander Zekthar of the Vulcaran Empire," he said formally. "I request parley to discuss terms of withdrawal." "Terms?" Webb replied coldly. "You invaded our world, killed our people, and destroyed our cities. Why should we offer terms?" "Because I can still order orbital bombardment that would kill millions," Zekthar said. "Or we can end this with both sides walking away." Webb considered this, knowing the alien was right. The Vulcarans still had enough firepower to cause massive damage even in defeat. "What do you propose?" he asked. "Safe passage for my forces to depart Earth," Zekthar replied. "In exchange, we leave all equipment and technology behind, and I will personally deliver a message to the Empire about humanity." "What message?" Webb asked. "That this world is too dangerous to conquer," Zekthar said simply. "That humans are not primitives but warriors who grow stronger under pressure." Webb looked at Chun. Bennett, Foster, and Morrison, seeing the same question in their eyes. Could they trust the alien commander? "You have 24 hours to evacuate all Vulcaran forces from Earth," Webb said finally. Any soldier still on the planet after that becomes our prisoner. Agreed, Zekthar replied. And for the first time in the conversation, he met Webb's eyes directly, for what it's worth. General, you have my respect. You fought brilliantly against impossible odds. We fought for our home, Webb replied. That's all any species can do. The transmission ended, and Webb turned to his staff. Send word to all resistance cells, he ordered. The Vulcaran are leaving. Anyone who wants to watch can gather at the spaceports over the next 24 hours. Vulcaran forces withdrew to their ships under the watchful eyes of human fighters. No shots were fired, no ambushes attempted, and the withdrawal was conducted with military precision. Cross stood on a rooftop in Denver, watching the alien ships lift off one by one. Bennett stood beside him, her rifle slung over her shoulder. Is it really over? Cross asked. This part is, Bennett replied. But there will be more challenges ahead. Rebuilding, dealing with other alien species, preparing for the possibility that the Empire might come back. Let them come, Cross said firmly. We'll be ready. Morrison flew escort as the Vulcaran fleet departed Earth's orbit, making sure they actually left. When the last ship vanished into faster-than-light travel, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. All Vulcaran forces have departed Earth, he reported. The planet is ours again. Cheers erupted across every communication channel, in every resistance cell, in every bunker and hiding place where humans had endured 3 months of occupation. Foster stood in her laboratory, surrounded by Vulcaran technology that would take years to fully understand. But they had time now, time to learn, time to grow. Time to prepare for whatever came next. Webb addressed the planet one final time. His message broadcast to every surviving human. Today, we won our freedom. He said not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we